2. First thing you fight is the cap. So the cap, now since we're fighting over water, this does not get reduced to the 3 factors until after the battle. That shows the air superiority of naval aircraft fighting over water compared to fighting over land, where the land unit will have the advantage. So the cap, it can choose how many planes it's going after, and it's going to go after 1. That's all it can really do. And so the air combat between 1 factor and 1 factor will be rolled. The Japanese are elite, so they're going to get an extra die roll. And the Americans on this one roll a 6, they go to a 4. So they destroy an a Japanese elite aircraft. Back elite aircraft. So this is how many elite aircraft the Japanese have lost so far. Not much. But you take a regular one and you put it in the force pole. So now this cap, who survived, can add to the defense. This cap that survived can add to the defense of the air defense die roll. So let's see what the air defense die roll is. Right here, for each carrier, no, for each 9 fleet there is 1. So he has 1, and then you add the each Army air factor, or the 3 naval air factor. So I'm going to add another one. So I have a 2, and there was no surprise on this. Remember, it's a 0. So my air defense roll, and I'm on the 2 factor table, and I rolled a 7. 2 factors at a 7, and 1 more plane is destroyed. So we take off another elite Japanese aircraft. And that'll be another 1 in the force pull for the Japanese. Lose another. Okay. Now we continue the attack. We have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 aircraft going to hit that ship now. So here's the air attack table, and they're all elite. They get a +1. And they just rolled a 12. +1 is a 13. And they sunk 5 ships and damaged all the rest. Now here's how this works. There's 7 damage. So 5 ships are destroyed. These are 7 have to get damaged. That's 4 left. So let me show you how this works. So out of 7 damaged, all 4 will receive 1 damage. That's 3 damage left over. That means 3 more are going to receive another damage. When you receive 2 damage, you're dead. So these 3 are now dead. Only 1 ship survives in this combat group, and the Americans lost 8 ships to that attack. And the Japanese planes fly home. Now, let's go to the carrier battle. The carrier battle has combat air patrol of 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. They can pick how many aircraft they choose to fight. And they're going to take 7 on. I always like to give me plus modifiers. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're going to combat 7 aircraft. That's going to give me a plus to the dice roll. I have 2 more than them, but they're elite, so they're a +1. So I end up with a +1 to this die roll. The Americans get a +1. They go to a 4. That's 1 enemy aircraft destroyed. Air combat is conducted in groups of 5. So I will take these 5, and we're going to attack 4 aircraft. No, I'm going to attack 3 aircraft. And I'm going to take these 4, and I'm going to attack 4 aircraft. So, out of this die roll, I have 2 more than him. I'm a +2. He's a +1. The die roll was a 4-3. So, the Japanese will lose 1 plane here. Another plane is destroyed. And the Americans don't have to lose any. So those 5 remain on cap duty. So 2 get through. Now this is a 4 on a 4. The Japanese are actually going to go up 1. Oh, the Americans tied him with a 6, so that's a draw. So whatever we roll, 5 aircraft are destroyed. That's 4 Japanese and 4 Americans. Wow, the Americans are really getting the best of the Japanese aircraft now. So F continues on with the attack. And now these two have to strike these carriers or this ship. But you have to go through an air defense roll. The air defense roll is 1 for this 6th fleet, plus you get to add whatever survived cap. So there's 5 and 1. That's a 6 air defense that we're going to roll on the Japanese. And we just rolled an 11. 2 destroyed, 3 aborted. So 2 more elite are gone. And 2 abort. 1 single aircraft got through on this whole attack. 1 airplane getting through. They're going to strike 1 carrier. Now the carriers weren't added into the air defense roll. They can now roll 1 factor for an air defense and see what happens. They rolled a 7. And that aborts a Japanese aircraft. So nothing got through to the carriers. The Japanese are very disappointed. And that is the end of the first round. Now, both players decide at this moment, do you want to continue fighting? Or are you going for another round? The Japanese say, let's do it. And the Americans say, let's do it. We're allowed to rearrange our combat group numbers, not the forces in them. The forces in them, they stay the way they are. Now except this one. This one got broken down. This one got broken down below 9. It cannot stay that way any longer. So it loses a combat group. So that'll go like that. So they're down to 2 combat groups. And they can put this up to combat group 1. And which we're going to do, because we're going after the Japanese carriers now. I like my chances of the search modifier. So we are going into combat group 1. And this will be combat group 2. And the Japanese can rearrange theirs. And I'll come back when I'm done with that. Japanese are not rearranging their combat groups. They're still going for it. What they did is they took some cap, the land-based cap, from protecting these groups, though, and threw them up here. And they took some of their cap and they put them back in the naval strike. So we're going for it again. Americans are ready. Let's go to the search modifiers now. Now what do the Japanese state? They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they lost these 2 here. They state they have 5 plus 5 to their search modifier. Then they ask if the Americans are playing any magic. The Americans say no. So the Japanese will roll for their search. And they got a 4 plus a 5 is a 9. They have a 9. The Americans state they have 2 for their combat groups. And 1 still for the airbase. See, the Japanese chose not to strike the airbase. They were really going after the Americans. So they have a plus 3. And they say they are not using a magic to modify their roll. So the Japanese now at this point figures they're out of magic, or they'd be using them. So plus 3 to the American roll. But the Japanese has to tell them they are conducting a naval activity, carrying ground troops here. So the Americans will get another one. So it is plus 4 to the Americans' die roll. And they rolled a 2 plus a 4 is a 6. So let's see what these are now. The Japanese end up with a 9. Good conditions. The number of fast carriers in enemy combat groups 1, 2, and 3 is revealed. And all 4 combat groups from the Japanese can attack. So everything's attacking here. And the Americans say, yep, combat group 1 has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carriers in it. So the Japanese know now what carrier group to strike. The Americans set it up like this. They brought their land-based cap from here into here, so, and they put 2 naval here. They're going to protect some cap, but they're going to try to sink a Japanese carrier too. So everything goes on carrier strike. So that's the search for the Japanese. And the Americans ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 and 2 is 6. They ended up with a 6. All enemy combat groups are located, and combat groups 1 and 2 may attack. So they know all their combat groups, and the Japanese tell them they have 5 combat groups, and these 2 combat groups may attack. So the Americans have to decide which combat group to go after. Now the Americans are thinking, you know what? He knows the Japanese were hungry and brought in their planes from their 1st or 2nd combat group. So the Americans are going to probably pick one of those. So anyways, the search is done. Now we go to the surprise level. The Japanese had 9 and the Americans had a 6. The difference is a 3. You go over to 3 and you have to -1 because American radar, and you get a 2. Enemy cap got off guard. They do not get a +1 for air combat between the cap and the attacking units. So that's it. Not great surprise level again, but it's something. So let's do the Japanese first. I'll set up their attacks and then come back. For the Japanese, I'm going to say something here. Maybe in the first turn I did poorly with the Japanese, because splitting the force up, I think, hurt me, and I should have put them all against one combat group. And even if I didn't get the carriers in the combat group, at least I have the entire force there, and I would sink whatever I hit. And then if I did find the American combat group, I'd have my whole force together. So that's a note to be taken. Don't split up, unless you're totally confident what each group has. Don't split up your force to attack. Go after one. And that's what I'm going to do this turn. The entire Japanese force. Now, I don't know what combat. Now, I mean, I know combat group 1 has all the carriers now. So, but in the past, I'm going to not split up my force so easily like that next time. But anyways, the entire Air Force is going after combat group 1. The Americans, they know there's 5 combat groups, and they don't know which one has carriers, and they're not going to split up their force. So they're going to say their entire force is hitting combat group 2. Now, the reason I say that, of course I know what the Japanese has, but if I was the American player, I know the Japanese have 10, 12 carriers, and I know he's probably going to have most of them in one of these combat groups, and I'm trying to take a guess that he has them in combat group 1, and I really don't want to fight that many carriers. I want to get a second combat group with his carriers, and that's why I picked 2. So I'm going after 2. Come to find out, it was a good choice. He only has these 4 carriers there, and the Japanese are taking on combat group 1. So let's conduct combat group 1. The Americans have cap. They don't get a +1 to their die roll again. They have 2, 3, they have 4 aircraft. And they choose to stop three of them. And now the Japanese are allowed to decide what planes will do the fighting. Either the elite or... And I want to go with the elite because I want to win this battle. So that's the air cap battle right there. It's 4 against 3. The Japanese want, the Americans only wanted to stop 3. So the Americans get a +1, the Japanese get a +1. So it's an even die roll. And the Japanese actually beat them by 1. So the Americans are actually losing 1. They're going to take off 1 naval aircraft. And these go home. That battle's done. The Japanese didn't lose any to cap. Now we're going to fly into the air defense. The air defense has 1 fleet factor plus the cap that's left. 1, 2, 3. So it's a +4, or the defense factors are a 4, and here comes the air defense roll. And it's a 6. Land-based aircraft cannot provide extra factors to the fleet defense die roll. They can still do cap, and I did that in the first round against the Japanese. So these don't add to the air defense. So the air defense factor is 1, 2. They have a 2 air defense factor. Let's see what they get. They just roll for 2 factors, and 1 plane gets aborted. So 1 Japanese plane is aborted, it goes back. So this is how many planes are now coming in on the American carriers. And they're going to go ahead and pick this. They want about 5. I think it takes close to 5 to try to destroy some aircraft carriers. So we're going to do that. We got 5 on each. So let's roll air defense factor for 1 here for the first carrier. And we just rolled a 6 for that carrier, and that's nothing. So 5 planes are going to strike the Intrepid. And they rolled a 7, and their elite aircraft, they go to an 8. So the air factors are 5. They rolled a 7, which goes to an 8. They destroyed 2 fleets and 4, so they sunk the American carrier. That's 1 American carrier down. These planes return. The next one, air defense roll, is a 6. And that's a miss. And then we go to attack. A 9 goes up to a 10 with 5 aircraft. Is a 3-4. That's another carrier. The Saratoga has just been sunk. Next, last one. Air defense roll is an 8. And we just aborted 1 Japanese aircraft. And now 4 hit. And they rolled a 3 with 4 factors, and they get to add 1 because they're elite. 3, 1 more is 4. 1 damaged, 1 sunk, and 1 point damaged. So this is a damaged aircraft carrier. They did not sink it. So 2 American carriers just got dropped in that Japanese attack. The American strike. And they're coming in with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 aircraft. And they're going to go ahead and pick. They got to first fight the cap. The cap is 2. If they win this air battle, they're going to eliminate 2 planes. I think they want to try that, because they would like to get rid of 2 planes. Japanese attack, and it's a 2-1. So they destroyed 1 plane. The other one survives, and the Japanese don't lose any on cap. So now with this, the Americans, they want to pick 2 light carriers. So after they get through the cap, they have a air defense roll of 1 factor. The Japanese can roll air defense now, and they got a 7 with 1 factor. And that is 1 plane aborts. So there's a 6, -1 is a 5 for 1 carrier, and that's a 0. And the second carrier is a 5, -1 is a 4. So they both miss, and now 3 airplanes are going to strike that light carrier. And they just rolled a 9 on the air attack table at a 3. And it's 1 sunk and another point damaged, and they only have 2 points. So the Japanese lose a light carrier. And then the second aircraft, the second roll is a 9 with 2 aircraft. And it's 1 sunk and 2 damaged. And that's all they got. It's a light aircraft. So another one. So that is the end of round 2. After round 2, the Americans are losing this battle. They're only down to 3, 4, 5, 6. They're down to 7 naval aircraft, and they've lost 2 fleet carriers. The Japanese have lost 2 light carriers. And the Japanese are losing their aircraft. Also, they've lost more aircraft than the Americans, but the decision now is to withdraw or to stay and fight. Now, after this next round, we can engage in a fleet combat. And the Americans are saying, yeah, their fleets, I think the Americans are going to withdraw. They've had enough of this battle, and they go back to Cairns. Americans just lost the Battle of the Coral Sea. They go home, 2 carriers sunk, and a total of 5 naval aircraft and 1 Army aircraft lost. The Japanese win the battle with a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, with 8 naval aircraft lost, 2 land-based aircraft lost, and 2 light carriers lost. So the Americans go back into Task Force 1, which returns inverted. The Japanese continue with their attack on Port Moresby. The defense of Port Moresby is 2 for defense, 1 because of seaborne invasion is 3, and 1 for the jungle is 4. So 4 times 2 is an 8. They have an 8. The Japanese are hitting them with 2, 3, and this 3 from the invasion is 6. 6 and 4 is a 10. Now they're allowed to, since this is done in the combat phase, they're allowed to give ground support from the carriers. Even though the carriers are involved in a naval battle, remember the planes come home, they get refueled, rebombed, they're going to go give ground support to Port Moresby on a 3-to-1 ratio basis. So the land-based air providing air cover can still provide air cover for them, but we're going to return them home because we know there's no more naval battle coming, and they're inverted. So the Japanese they can provide how much ground support? They have a total of 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. They have a total of 21 planes. Divided by 3 is 7. They can actually provide 7 ground support. So 7 and 10 is 17. They are missing. Can you believe that? Oh, they need the shore bombardment. This fleet was needed to carry the infantry, and now they have 6 more points in shore bombardment. So they have 23 factors hitting Port Moresby to that 8. They don't quite get 3-to-1, but it's 2-to-1. Here's the roll. 2-to-1 is a counterattack, 1-to-2. Australians counterattack back. They roll a 3. I think that's a counterattack back to the Japanese on a, let's look at this table. So they rolled a 2. It's counterattack 1-to-2, and they rolled a 3. And a 3 is a counterattack back to them. Yes. So the Japanese hit again. The battle's raging, and it's a 5. The Australian dies. And the Japanese have taken Port Moresby. They're not even advanced with these 2 here. We'll then advance with this one, because they want to continue taking more cities here. This goes back home. The task force are completed. They all go back home to Truk. And that is the end of the Battle of the Coral Sea. Port Moresby is in the Japanese hands. The task force returned to their original positions. Mistake I made. I was just checking research results, and the Japanese have a +1 to their air defense rolls because of research. So I got to remember that stuff. I'm playing a lot of the whole board here, so it's tough to remember some things. But anyways, I'm just checking research to see if we increased any construction rate, because we're going to build for the Japanese, and they still have a 3 naval construction rate and 3 naval air construction rate and 3 naval construction rate. So That was still exciting. Great battle. I think I made a mistake with the Japanese in the first round, or I would have had more carriers sunk. But then the Americans, they ended up actually retreating. I think was a good idea. They only lost 2 carriers, and they're going to keep getting more. So the Japanese 9 SRs are done. They built 2 3-3s. They didn't have to SR them because Korea you can put troops in. So the 2 go there. That's going to help my attack on Russia. I had to SR 1 plane off Manila into Japan to cover, into China to cover the zone of control so he can't build partisans. Then I SR 2 planes here. This island is mine to protect any, and I got 3 here. This is all, again, the same setup I have here. If the Americans try to come in this way, we're going to protect it. Now, I didn't have enough SRs to SR my entire task force. I would like to get my other task force now. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'll see, because I still would like to get down into here, but at the same time, if the Americans are getting power this way, I need to shift my base of operation into this section to protect this area, and then just count on maybe a smaller task force here and my defense to allow this to hold its own. I know the Gilbert Islands won't be defended that heavily, but if he takes that, that's the least. But I don't want him in here, and I don't want him in the Marshall Islands, and I don't want Wake. That's why I built a fort here. Oh yeah, and I'm allowed to build 1 more fort, and I didn't do it. I replaced the 3-2 there, SR'd him back onto Wake that I used for the invasion. So that's about it. I'm still not happy with my defense here. I'm going to need another turn to get it to where I want it. But let me go ahead and build 1 more fort too. That's minus $5 more. String of 3 forts right now. Wake, Kawajuan, and Guadalcanal, all on the objectives, fortified. I'm going to probably get a couple more forts. 1 more go on Truk, and probably 1 more on Rabaul, maybe, I don't know, but definitely Truk. And I think Iwo Jima is going to have to be fortified, because if he takes Wake, he can get right into Iwo Jima. So this one's just, I think I'll just build up troops here and get some more here. So in Europe, I'm going to go ahead and take the Germans and Italians' turns, and then I'll get back to you. We killed about 26 factors, so I got 2 more Russian nationalists back on the board. See, I think as a Russian, I'm going to start killing those, because the Germans don't get them back in their force pool. They only get them depending on how many they kill every turn. So there's 6 left over. That's why that number's there. 6 left over on a remnant. I'm just going to try to kill Russians every turn. It was tough getting over this river. I was short, since the start of the war, I've been short, or I was short 4 that were destroyed, and 5, 6. There's actually 6 tanks less on this Russian front than I'm used to, so I just brought 3 of them back, and 3 of them are going to stay over in the west. So at least I got up to the tanks there, bought everything I could, and 1 fleet ship, $27 for the allowable build fleets. So I want to get all my fleets on, get ready for this invasion here. The Italians bought everything they could. The Germans had to send them 10 BRPs so they can have the opportunity to take an offensive down here if they want. These units were isolated in Africa. They couldn't be rebuilt. I did rebuild my paratrooper this turn, and I didn't have enough SRs. I used all 10 SRs right here. Moving planes around, moving guys in position. You want to just constantly cover this line. And the Italians are just going to beef up Italy now. Get ready for the Allies. The Allies took Africa. There's no more Axis in Africa. Basically the end of 1942. So I basically do Italy and start hammering them there. Make Germany divert resources down here. So I did met 1 battle. I had a couple exchange, but 1 battle was a 2-to-1 with an armor unit, and I rolled a 4 and he got a 6. I lost an armor unit on an exchange. It was going to go right through here, because I wanted to cut them off in here, this section, but I blew that attack. So other than that, the Germans and Italians are done. The only thing we have left to do is our SW phase right now. Dice roll was poor on the SW phase here, and we changed that to 7. They only lost 2 SRs. It was like $6. The SW phase over here, the Americans took nothing off the Japanese. Poor roll. The Japanese took 3 off the Americans, so the Americans are going to lose 1 SR to whatever they get next turn. And so that's it. We're going into the winner. 1942 turn.